Max Bankman, I'm the new doctor.
Welcome aboard the Odyssey.
ABC Thursdays.
This ship is heaven. We're tending to our passengers' dreams. I'm in.
From 911 executive producer Ryan Murphy comes a splashy new drama on a luxury cruise ship with Joshua Jackson and Don Johnson.
It's your job to keep everyone alive.
She's in VFib. 1, 2, 3. Clear.
I have a pulse.
You're going to be okay.
Dr. Odyssey. Thursdays, 9/8 Central on ABC. And stream on Hulu.
Fever, cough, congestion. When the symptoms keep coming, but you've got to keep going, you can rely on Mucinex Fast Max All-in-One. Just one dose of Mucinex Fast Max All-in-One relieves up to 9 cold and flu symptoms, helping you get on with your day. Need cold and flu relief? Get Mucinex Fast Max All-in-One and Done Relief. It's comeback season. Use as directed.
Hi everybody and welcome to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. Today I'm going to be talking about masking and what this means and why it is being used in a way that I think is not very useful for people's relationships. Before we get to that, I'll tell you to subscribe. I have 175 extra subscriber episodes and they are awesome. So much extra listening, oral sex on women, stuff about needs, boundaries, obviously intimacy, parenting, self, career. I mean, they're just in all sorts of areas. So definitely subscribe and you'll get all of my content instead of just 75% of my content. Okay, so masking is this idea that if somebody is autistic, and you know the autism spectrum is talked about a lot now, that if somebody is not neurotypical, then they are masking in order to pass as neurotypical, and this is bad. So, I mean, there's a lot there to begin with, but specifically, this is something that you should not do, according to popular media, within marriage. Now, like, where to start, right? So we all got to do shit we don't want to do, right? I mean, to be in a loving relationship. So here's some examples of masking, you know, and then sometimes people say, by the way, before I get to this, they say, well, you see, people's brains on the spectrum are different than neurotypical brains, and therefore it's different. Everything's different because then they really shouldn't mask. Bullshit, man. What? Like, now that we do so many brain studies, everybody's brain is different. People with depression have different brains. People with ADHD have different brains. People with autism have different brains. People with OCD, all of the brain activity, the frontal lobe, the everything, the white matter, the gray matter, you could find studies, and I reviewed many of these studies, right? Like they come up, you're a psychologist, so guess what you get is Google alerts, right? I mean, every single time they do a brain study on anything, I get it, right? So you know, never mind if you're actually in academia, which I was obviously in grad school for years, and then you really look at the brains and you look at the articles and all of this. So the point is, this is not a new idea that the brains are different. You know, I remember the study of the brains with people with antisocial personality disorder are different, and the people with OCD are different. Everybody's different. Great. Everybody's brain is different. But guess what? You still got to, quote, mask at some times if you want to live with other people. Now, if you don't want to live with other people, that is okay. But if you cannot say that you're being disingenuous and you can't mask within your marriage, and therefore you can't touch, you can't be intimate, you can't be affectionate, but then somehow you still got to be married. It doesn't make any sense, right? Because so I work with a lot of guys with ADHD, right? I would never think to say he can't mask, he has ADHD, he can't mask by pretending to remember the boring stuff that you tell him. So he's either you got to become more exciting, or, you know, just don't ever expect him to remember anything. It'll be like Groundhog Day for the rest of your life. He shouldn't think it's a problem. He shouldn't work with anybody. He definitely shouldn't write anything down. That's very disingenuous. And he doesn't want to. His brain is different. Let me show you these studies of ADHD brains. They're different. Would never think to do that. It's crazy, right? So, or somebody with depression, and I am somebody with depression, right? And to say that somebody with depression is masking by pretending to be interested in shit when they're not interested in it. Yeah, that's called being a parent. That's called being a partner. That's called working, right, in a world. That's called interacting, having friends. your dopamine, if you don't have enough dopamine going around in your brain, then you do not think that things are interesting or exciting. But guess what? If something good happens to your partner or your child, you still got to act like you're interested and you're happy, even if you're not happy that day. And nothing's going to make you happy that day. You still got to try. Now, if you are trying and you're going to therapy and you're thinking what kind of medications can help you and you're, really, really trying to figure out how to be empathic and how to live in a relationship with other people, that's great. I mean, the guy with ADHD is never going to remember as many things that his wife says as a guy without ADHD. But if he's trying, if he empathizes with that this would be a problem, and he's trying to do it through various things that he reads about how to do, or that he's coached to do, or that his therapist works with him on how to do, then great. Many women just want that. They just want the effort. They just want the guy with ADHD to say, yes, I will use your Google Calendar. Like, that is like a big victory. But if he says, no, that's masking because my brain is different because I have ADHD, that would not be being a very good husband, right? So similarly, if a woman says she has sensory issues because she's a highly sensitive person, I too am a highly sensitive person, and I talk about that all the time. Most therapists, I believe, are highly sensitive people. Certainly 80% of clients are highly sensitive people. But the point being, yeah, okay, you could be a sensitive person, but if you say that means that when my kids get home from school, I go into a room alone and I don't talk to them for 2 hours because it's overstimulating, well, then you're not being a very good parent, right? Let's call a spade a spade. Certainly, you could see it very well at work. If you said, I am a highly sensitive person, so therefore I cannot take this call because it's going to be overstimulating, you wouldn't have a job anymore. So at a certain point, particularly with their kids, people realize the limits of talking about this masking stuff. I never heard anybody yet say it about parenting. Maybe that's coming around the corner. But yeah, you got to mask because there's lots of ways. Like if you like to, let's say, talk about things that are not appropriate for children, and then you don't do that around your children. That could be considered masking, or it could be considered prudent and caring and considerate. So to be in a relationship with another person, you have to be flexible. There has to be some give and take. It doesn't matter. Of course, your brains are different. They're different by virtue of being male and female anyway. And then they're going to be different in myriad ways that we have not even uncovered. 50 years from now, do you think that they're still going to be using the same classification system for autism spectrum, ADHD, and what have you, depression, anything? Certainly not. Look at how many changes there have been to the DSM, which we use for diagnosis in my profession, and in general, all of the different scientific advances that actually go back and change the entire structure of how we think about disorders and what's lumped together and how things are categorized. All of this stuff now will be the way that we think of leeches, now. We think, boy, they used to use leeches? Like that was the treatment? That's how we're going to that's how in future we're going to think about current conceptualizations of all of these diagnoses. So let's not, let hubris make us stupid, right? It is not that right now we have the best and truest and only real way of conceptualizing these things. Everybody's brain, at some point, everybody's brain is going to be able to be looked at, and we will compare and contrast them in totally different ways, right? So it's not just like that there's one normal brain and then one not normal brain. No, everybody's brain is unique. We can't even conceive of the ways that we are going to categorize and classify people's brain anatomical and structural differences, the differences in their neurotransmitters, et cetera, et cetera. So to say that somebody who has a certain kind of brain that we've only recently learned how to discriminate from another kind, therefore does not have to try in relationships is nearly, it's ludicrous, right? I mean, that's crazy because the other person has a different brain than them. So why should they have to mask? It's as silly to say a guy should have to mask to not, so then is a guy with a high libido masking to not initiate sex 5 times a day? I mean, yeah, I guess he is. He's masking. He's trying to pass as low libido for that day. That sounds absurd, right? So there has to be some level of, quote, masking that we do called trying to be flexible, to accommodate the perspectives and the needs of other human beings in our orbit, particularly our immediate orbit, the nuclear family, and the marriage. So then you say, all right, I get it. Philosophically, I'll mask. I'll do it. I'll try to mask, aka be flexible, get outside my comfort zone. But you know what? I just can't bring myself to do it. I have sensory issues, and his penis is disgusting to me. And you know what? I get what you said is that during the honeymoon stage, it wasn't because of all the dopamine. I get it. I agree. But just now, really, it is disgusting, and I don't want to mask and say it's not. Well, then there's something open to you called you're not in a relationship anymore. Or you say, let's open the marriage for you. Or you say, let's have a parenting marriage and open it for both of us. And then if he says no to that, then you divorce. I mean, there's not too many different ways to slice it. It isn't that one person gets to pick what they want to do and the other person has to go along with it for something super big, like let's say talking, So you could get a guy who says, I'm an introvert, I never knew it, I don't want to mask anymore as an extrovert, so I'm not going to talk to you ever again in our marriage. And then she's supposed to say what? Okay? Anyone would consider it emotional abuse, right? Anybody would. So therefore, what is it when she says, I just realized that I've been masking all these years and I don't want to have sex with you? Then you're not married anymore. It could not really be clearer than that, because something that was a core component, talking or sex, whichever example you use, is now completely off the table. One person says that to do that would be antithetical to their core self-concept. Well, shit, who wants sex under those conditions anyway, right? If it's going to make the person hate themselves and feel disingenuous to themselves and now they want to be authentic, but you can't be both things. As I say all the time. What do I say all the time? There's no free lunch. So there's no free lunch. You can't say we're going to be married and you married the person who was masking, but now you got to love the person who's not masking. Because as I said, if he was masking as somebody who liked to talk, if he was masking as somebody who liked to have a job, if he was masking as somebody who liked children, and now all of a sudden he's like, you know what? My core self doesn't like these children that we had. It's like, well, sorry, I mean, that's real shitty. And at that point, if let's say the man said, man, I never should have had children. Well, then he has a choice to make. He cannot just say to her, I want to stay married, but I'm never going to interact with these children and I'm going to stay in their life, but I'm going to tell them that I regret them. No, he would have to go and leave his family, right? Which I guess in that situation really wouldn't be very bad because he's decided he no longer loves the children, no longer wants to engage with them, wishes he never had them. We would think he was a pretty bad guy, but how could you think that that's a pretty bad guy, but not to say the same thing about somebody who expects to be in a relationship without a romantic component because now they've realized that they're masking, etc. I do not think these people are being disingenuous. I don't. I really don't. But I think that the language of masking makes it seem like it's you're being untrue to your deepest self if you try to change in certain ways. Like if you try to get over a sensory issue, which of course, anybody who's tried, I used to be a very picky eater, for example. And then at some point, when I was about, I don't know, fifth grade, let's say, it starts to be more that you want to fit in. And I was like, well, I'm not going to do that anymore, because this sucks. Because I go to birthday parties and I don't eat what everybody eats. So I made it my mission. I was going to start to like the different food. And then eventually I got to where I could eat anything. It was never a problem, ever. Now I'm an ethical vegan, so ironically, I don't eat everything anymore. But I will never not eat anything based on the texture or what have you, because that was something that was taking me away from fitting in with other people, right? And it's the same kind of thing. So I've seen many people who think that they, for example, can't kiss at all, get to be people who nearly got phobic because avoidance reinforces an anxiety and exposure gets you used to it. So if you were somebody, for example, that felt they couldn't hug, you would still hug your kids no matter what, hopefully, because otherwise they think you don't love them, because hugging is such a mainstream way to show affection, particularly to a small child. So it also is within marriage. So is it ethical to say to somebody, like, I just can't hug you anymore because of my sensory issues? It is only if you're following it up with saying either I am working on it and I'm trying to expose myself to it and I'm trying to get better at it, and I know that it's become nearly an anxiety, not so much of a can't do but a won't do, and now I'm going to try to work on it to the point that it's like it's something I could do. It's like so funny to think, like, when people say that they just can't do something, how many things did you learn to become an adult that you didn't think you could ever do? One of them, my kid said, how do you remember everything about cooking, Well, of course, at first you don't think that you would. You would never know what spice to put on anything, right? But then eventually it's just completely second nature because you've practiced so much. However, if you say, I just can't cook, and you're 18 years old and you say, I just can't cook, and it would be masking to say that I can cook when it in fact makes me feel very anxious and uncomfortable to be in the kitchen, which of course it does to anybody who's not grown up around cooking. To teach yourself anything, you start feeling like an imposter, very anxious, very, very dysregulated even, very, like you go into the grocery store and it's like, how do you know what to do? How do you know what to get? And if you don't power through that, you never become somebody who enjoys cooking. You never become somebody who can cook because you've just kind of decided that your core self is going to be defined by what you are uncomfortable with. And definitionally, you're going to be uncomfortable with everything you haven't done yet. So the whole masking thing, it goes against a lot of behavioral therapy, right? Which is, of course, anybody's, welcome to listen to me or not, but that's a core, that informs a lot of my therapy as I was trained behaviorally. And then after that, I learned other methodologies and other approaches and other theoretical orientations as well. But if you don't practice doing something, you're not going to get better at it. So there's people who say, I can't kiss, and so therefore I won't kiss, and it's masking, and I was masking all these years, and now I'm never going to kiss again because that's my true self. And then there's people who are like, I like kissing during the honeymoon stage, now it makes me anxious. I'm going to think about other reasons it does, including I didn't see my parents kiss, most likely, and maybe he needs to brush his teeth more often, and I could tell him that, and then I am going to kiss because you know what? I love this person, and I'm going to try. I'm going to try to get outside my comfort zone. Or whatever in bed, or whatever romantic thing. I have a whole podcast on responsive romance, where guys say, but I wanted to do that stuff in the honeymoon stage, and now I don't, and it feels awkward and weird and not genuine. Yeah, it does. Isn't that a shit show that life is? Sometimes we don't want to do stuff when our brain is telling us that we're not in the mood. But if we want to be a good person, we power through that shit show, and we try to do something for our friends, our loved ones, our coworkers, and our children and our partners. Now, if you get to where you really can, or none of this resonates with you, and you're like, I want to be my core authentic self, then do it. But don't also say that then we should remain married, because that doesn't make any sense. And it's a fiction to say that if you, quote, masked in a way that your partner liked, that then it's a fairy tale to say then they should love you the same if you stop, quote, masking. Right? Because that's the same thing where if a guy said, you know what, all these years I was only telling you these nice things, these compliments, because I was a people pleaser. Now I'm not a people pleaser anymore, so I'm never going to compliment you again. Well, shit. How many people, if that was your girlfriend in that situation, how many women would say, why don't you just leave his ass? What a nasty thing to say to you, right? Of course. So how's it any different when she's like, all these years I was masking about sex, intimacy, touch even, and now I decided I'm going to be my core self. All right, so we could be our core selves separately. And that would be, if you don't want to work on something that makes somebody very unhappy, that removes a core aspect of marriage for them, or parenting, or a friendship, or whatever else, like if you had a friend, you said, you know what, I've been masking as somebody who likes to text. I don't really like to text. I'm never going to text you again. I mean, well, then, the relationship would probably go to shit, right? There would be no more friendship, unless it's a rare person that says, oh, cool, then I'll just come over your house every day, So we got to make choices. And what I really don't like about the masking rhetoric is it acts like there's one true, authentic core person that never changes. When in reality, anybody who's been in the field of psychology knows that people are growing, changing, evolving all the time, and frequently taking yourself outside of your comfort zone is the only way that you can grow. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will talk to y'all soon. Have a great day, guys.